Hey guys, how are you? It's Miss Bobby. I've missed you guys so much this week. I hope you guys have had fun. It's beautiful outside today. I waited for a warmer day to come out and record my video so I could be outside where it's brighter and sunny, and it's gorgeous out here. So I hope you guys have had a couple days at least where you could get out and run around. We celebrated Alex's birthday a couple days ago, and we've just tried to make the best of it. I want you guys to say hello to Miss Princess Leia. Leia is Autumn's guinea pig. Leia is about 6 months old, and Autumn's had her for a couple months now. And I asked Autumn if we could borrow her for just a few minutes because I wanted to talk to you guys today. Our lesson is about Jeremiah and about how look how she's looking at you guys, how Jeremiah had a message from God, but not everybody listened to it. And so I was thinking, what if Autumn decided to go out of town? And she asked me if I could take care of Leia. And I would tell her, sure, I don't mind doing something like that. She's a pretty good girl, right? She's cute as she could be. I don't mind taking care of her. And so Autumn could write down everything that she wants me to do to take care of her. How much food to give her, what to do to clean out her cage, all of that kind of stuff, right? And then if Autumn left, I could do two things. I could either listen to what Autumn told me and everything goes just fine, or I could choose not to listen to what Autumn told me. I wouldn't even pick up the letter that the paper that she wrote all the instructions down on, and then things just wouldn't go well. We weren't getting along too well. I couldn't figure it out, and so I just gave her to somebody. And then when Autumn came back home, she'd be like, "What in the world? I asked you to take care of her. You agreed to it, right?" But I tell her sorry. It just didn't work out. I just decided not to do it. I decided to do my own thing. We didn't really get along. Somebody else really wanted her, and so, I just let them have her. That wouldn't be very nice. It wouldn't be very smart whenever I had all the instructions that Autumn had given me, right? And Autumn would be quite upset at me. She would be sad because she loves Leia a whole lot. So sometimes we do God the same way, right? Sometimes as we're reading through our Bible or something, or listening to a sermon that maybe Pastor Nate preaches, or something like that, or even a lesson downstairs in Keystone Kids, sometimes these things are hard, and sometimes maybe we might be afraid of maybe what God is going to ask us to do, or something that we just kind of don't want to do because it seems hard, and so we just decide to skip over that part. And just continue to do things our way. And so just like with taking care of Leia, I could have chosen to write or to read what Autumn wrote down for me, the step-by-step instructions, and it would have been so much easier to take care of her, and we could have made it work out, right? But instead, I chose to not listen and to do things my own way, and it made things much more difficult. So today is our last day to talk about Jeremiah, which Jeremiah was the prophet. We talked about it last week. He was a young man, but he was a prophet, which was somebody that God chose to speak to, and then that person would go and tell him, or go tell God's people the special message from God. And so this happened again. God gave Jeremiah another message, and this time he asked for his friend's help, and his friend's name was Baruch, and Baruch was a scribe. And a scribe was somebody that just wrote down what somebody else told them to write. So just like maybe if you have a younger brother or sister, and they can't really read or write right now, but they wanted to write a letter to maybe your grandparents or a friend or something like that, and they say, "Hey, can you help me write this letter?" And so they would just tell you what to write, and you would write the words down. That's exactly what Baruch did. Baruch just wrote down what Jeremiah told him to do. And so then after they got done, Jeremiah said, "Hey, buddy, I have one more favor to ask of you. I need you to take this into town, and I need you to read it to God's people." And so that's what Baruch did. Baruch did exactly what Jeremiah said. And so he read it to God's people, and these people had seen God work before. Remember, we've talked about all the incredible things that God did, and they'd seen how God worked, and so they knew when God spoke, they better listen, right? And so many of them listened to what Baruch had to say. Just like, have you guys ever, whenever it's time when mom and dad, and they get that certain tone that it's time to listen, that's kind of what the children of Israel did. They knew it was time to listen to what God was telling them. But at that time, they had an evil king, and his king's name was King Jehoiakim. And he was not a good man. He followed, he worshipped other idols. He worshipped false gods. He didn't listen to what God told him to do. He was a bad influence. He kind of encouraged God's people to worship other gods, and was just a kind of a no good, rotten kind of person, right? And so he heard about what Baruch said, and he wanted to hear it for himself. So he said, I want to hear this again for myself. So Baruch went to where King Jehoiakim was, and he read it to him. And as he was reading it to him, Jehoiakim didn't like what he was hearing at all, right? He was the king, he was the know-it-all, and he didn't like what God was saying to him. And so he took the scroll, which is what they wrote on. You guys have probably seen the ends rolled together. You've probably seen it on movies or shows. In a scroll, they would open it this way, and they would read down what was written on it. And so as Jehoiakim was looking in, he was looking at what was written on the scroll. He didn't like it, right? He didn't like what God had to say. And so he took a knife and he cut off the top section of it, and he kind of wadded up and threw it in the fire. And so he read through the next section. Didn't like that either. And so he cut it off, wadded it up, threw it in the fire. And he kept doing that until it was all gone. Now, he's silly because, first of all, we know that doesn't change God's words, right? Just because he got rid of what was written on the scroll didn't change what God had told them. But King Jehoiakim chose not to listen to God. He chose to do things his own way. And kind of the opposite, his dad, who was in charge before him, his dad's name was Josiah. And Josiah was a good man. He was a godly man. He wanted to do what God said. He wanted to follow God's rules. And when King Josiah was in charge, he didn't encourage people to worship false gods. In fact, he tore them down. He got rid of them. He wanted his people to worship only the one true God. And so just like that example, it kind of reminds us that we can choose to be either like King Josiah and do what God tells us to do, or we can be like King Jehoiakim and not do what God tells us to do and do things our own way. Now, what are some of the things, you guys can tell me, what are some of the things that God tells us to do? Obey our parents, right? He tells us he tells us that we need to tell the truth, not to lie. He tells us to be a good friend, to be a good helper. But one of the things that he tells us to do is to tell our friends about Jesus. Now, I know that just like with King Josiah, some of you may be thinking, hey, listen, Miss Bobby, I'm a little too young for that. And I understand completely. Sometimes these things are difficult, but one of the things God tells us to do is to tell our friends about Jesus. Now, I understand that whenever you're in school, sometimes people can be kind of grumpy about this kind of stuff, and sometimes they can become bullies about it because they don't understand why we're different. They don't understand why we go to church. They don't understand why we love God and that kind of thing. And so I understand it can make it very difficult, but I want to encourage you guys because that is one of the things that God tells us to do. So we can either choose to do it our own way and not tell our friends about Jesus, or we can choose to follow God's rules, and we can choose to follow his instructions, which is to tell our friends about Jesus. And so I know things are a little bit different this week because we're all kind of away from it. We're not allowed to play with our friends. It was another week of staying in the house. We're getting there. We're getting close to this all being over. But I know it's difficult to see your friends and stuff right now. But, maybe you're doing FaceTime with them, or maybe you can send them a text or an email or something like that and tell your friends about Jesus. Or just if the conversation comes up whenever you guys are together, it may not be now, maybe it's a few weeks from now. But I would encourage you guys to tell your friends whenever you get a chance. And just like you may be afraid of being too young, but we know that God promised, just like he promised Jeremiah, that he's going to give us the words to say, and he's going to help us do those things that are hard. And so I hope you guys have a great week. I cannot wait to see you guys. Just like I said last week, we are going to party hardy whenever this is all over with, okay? We're going to have so much fun, and I can't wait to see you guys, and I can't wait to hug you. Please know that if you need to talk, you can talk to me anytime. Like I said last week, you can always send a message to me by text. You can call me. We can do FaceTime, whatever you guys want to do. If you need to just talk to somebody, I would love to hear from you guys. But I'm praying for you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.